Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Davey Deathray here, and I am so excited because this time around, we've got something pretty special for you. Recently, I was fortunate enough to hop on a call with Jacob Hare, who is an Emmy Award-winning director for the massively popular TV show Rick and Morty. Now, Jake has also worked on King of the Hill, Family Guy, American Dad, and we're gonna get into his journey as an artist from being a little kid drawing for fun to pursuing that dream and finding success as a professional. But not only that, guys, Jake is a huge horror fan, so we're gonna talk a whole bunch about horror. We kind of go all over the place a little bit. I had a lot of fun speaking with Jake. I hope you guys enjoy the interview as well. Make sure you hit that like button if you do, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and drop a little something in the comments, whether or not you have a question for myself or for Jake. I'll do everything I can to make that connection, and perhaps we'll bring him on for another visit. But before we jump into the interview, I've got to give a big shout out and thank you to one of our Death Squad mods and channel members, Leanna Bevy Rage. She set this whole thing up. She went to high school with Jake and reached out, made the connection, got us in contact with each other. This whole thing wouldn't have even come close to happening without her, so thank you so much, Leanna. And with that, let's jump in, guys. All right, thank you so much, Jake, for joining me here and, getting to talk a little bit about your career, your journey from being a fan to becoming a professional artist, which is pretty awesome and quite, I would imagine, quite a difficult journey. But thank you so much for joining us here. I'm looking forward to kind of nerding out with you. How are you doing today?
Likewise, doing good. It's been, it's never chill. It's always chaos, working production. But yeah, I'm hanging in there. I never sleep anymore these days either. I'm getting too old for that shit, but it's a leftover habit. I turn nocturnal when you become an artist, and then you get too old to do it. But then to keep up with the pace you've set for yourself, you gotta keep that insomnia going. So I'm coffeeed up. I'm good.
There is something about, like, just from doing the YouTube thing, there is something about that, like, once everyone's in bed, like sometimes like 1 to 4 in the morning, I get a lot of
Yeah.
shit done,
No, absolutely. I almost can't function without that exact shift. And then suddenly I wake up to feed the cats at 5:30 in the morning, and I'm like, did I sleep 2 hours last night? It's usually like 2 hours, and then I there's a makeup day somewhere in the middle of the week,
Yes. And I'm a terrible napper. I don't know like if I nap, I'm like I'm groggy all day. It's like I don't know what the hell happens. So yeah, I'm kind of like that too, where you save it up, and then you get that one day where you're like, I just slept 12 hours. What the hell happened? So
I've come out of some naps. I've come out of some naps and gone to get my kid at daycare, and I've been like, did I speak English to those people at the daycare? I don't even know if I, was human. But yeah, totally. I feel you on
Yeah,
that.
everyone at the daycare is like creative types. Am I right? This guy. So yeah, before we get into the journey and everything, we might as well just kind of touch on, what you do professionally, since we're already talking about it. I mean, it looks like you went to, well, whatever. We can go back to the journey and talk about going to art school and all that. But what are you working on currently?
Currently, I'm the supervising director at Rick and Morty, which is the Adult Swim show, and I've been there since like 2018. I started off as an episode director there, where I was, doing 3 episodes a season, where I, lead the team of storyboard artists and draw the visuals for the show. And then just 2 years ago, I think, my boss and friend left the show as supervisor to go do the new King of the Hill reboot, and I stepped into the supervising role. So now, instead of just doing 3 episodes a season, I kind of like work on all the episodes, and the directors, I work with the directors and just, give feedback and do still storyboarding and still editing and all the same things I was doing before, with a wider spread, more thin over more episodes kind of situation.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was curious about that when you make that move from director to supervising. I'm like, I wonder how much supervising directors still draw, because I grew up with The Simpsons and everything, and then when they started coming out on DVD, it was like I fell in love with those commentaries because I'm a giant nerd. And so I didn't even realize until
Yeah.
listening to the commentaries. I'm like, oh, so sometimes the directors are like, no, 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 you're not getting it right. I'm going to draw this scene for you. So you guys know what I'm kind of picturing here. But yeah, I was curious to know what that transition was like. And in fact, the episode, the Vat of Acid episode. So you won an Emmy for that one back in 2020. That's amazing. And then I even saw, speaking of The Simpsons, I'm like, oh, supervising director Wes Archer. Like I recognize that
Hmm.
name for sure. Now, did he go back to King of the Hill? Is he the one that left to take that on? Because I know he directed a whole bunch of those episodes as well from the original run.
Yeah, yeah. Wes was at the genesis of that show, and that was my first animation gig was King of the Hill back in 2008. Wes hired me there, and he gave me my first shot, and it's based on a storyboard test. So I actually took a test. It's sort of like a audition almost that
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they still do as many tests nowadays. I don't hear a lot of shows doing it, but yeah, I storyboarded a scene for them, and it was approved, and I got hired, and it was, I had to sacrifice all my sleep to make sure that I hung in there with it, and but it worked out. It turned out to be a perfect fit. I was trying all manner of other thing and illustration and all these other things, and when I got to animation, and I walked in and everyone's sitting in there in Spider-Man t-shirts talking about, horror movies, I was like, oh shit, this is exactly where I belong, isn't it? And it's worked out. Yeah, from storyboarding, I then advanced to assistant directing at King of the Hill, which is sort of like storyboard artists move all around the show to different episodes. As an assistant director, you get locked in with one director and you just work on their 2 or 3 episodes that they're doing a season as sort of like the big gun storyboard artists who also then
Mhm.
then you start to sit in on editing sessions and stuff. And but everything's changed so much over the years. It used to be a very linear process where there was a storyboard and then a layout and then an editing session. And now the software lets you do storyboard, layout, editing all in place. The lines
Mm,
get blurred about whose job is what, and so
yeah.
you got to yeah, it's definitely been like some job creep in the world of animation over the years, but also things have gotten a lot better with the software too. I was drawing on paper when I started at King of the Hill. They were scanning it in sheet by sheet still, and now we're drawing digitally. But then, yeah, the
Mhm.
the leap from assistant director to episode director is tremendously huge. It's actually kind of insane, but and you go from being this quiet artist type sitting alone in a cubicle with your assignment, just drawing maybe for 4 weeks without talking to another human being, to leading a team of artists where suddenly you have to have social skills and organizational skills and hygiene and all these things you might not have needed before. But yeah, that's the big leap. Truthfully, I think the leap to supervising is a little less dramatic from episode directing in a weird way. There's certain
Mm.
It's much more responsibility, but there's parts of it that relax too. I think directing episodes might be the most intense job, just because you're in control of so much. And yeah, you usually taking a couple sequences to draw for yourself and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and then I would imagine that like all the stresses and everything that you learn from directing, it just sort of those are the building blocks to be able to do the supervisoring part of it, a little with a little more ease, right? Kind of gives you those tools you need to supervise the whole team as opposed to just the team for those episodes that you're working on.
For sure, yeah. It's sort of like you speak to the rules of the show a lot more. All supervisors do. It's funny, like every episode, every TV show has a playbook. It's a lot like I always use the analogy of playing basketball. You're always playing basketball. You're just switching teams and you have to learn a new playbook. It's hilarious how
Hmm.
some of the stuff on King of the Hill, or some of these other shows is designed to diametrically oppose other stuff that's out there. So like in Family Guy, the acting is always have your actors do this when they're talking. And on King of the Hill, there's literally a sheet that said like never have your actors do this, and so the bent wrist acting gesture is a thing. And but
Yeah.
it's always like, how do we do mouth charts, how do we do this or that. It's all kind of the same job. It's just stylized towards the show that you're working on. And so as a supervisor, you're usually kind of like just trying to do quality control and make sure that everything that's coming into you through all these channels is kind of like still falling under the umbrella of the show, kind of following the rules in a weird way. Whereas, as a director of an episode, you might take a sequence for yourself, put much more of your own stamp on it. At a supervising, then a supervisor puts a stamp on it by making the blanket rules that everyone else has to follow. So it's kind of like a trickle down system. Yeah.
So yeah, so a little more personal then too when you're a director as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And, I do want to get into, your background and everything, but I do have to ask before we kind of move on from the Rick and Morty talk and all that. The show has such a rabid, amazing fan base. Like, are you so kind of entrenched in the work of it all and everything, and the fact that you don't get to sleep and all that, or is it difficult to realize just how big the show is and how much it resonates with so many people out there? Or do you ever get to take a step back and be like, wow, like, I would imagine you grew up watching The Simpsons as well and all that stuff, and then you've worked on these shows, and then now you have this huge part in a show that's kind of like The Simpsons of the modern era, like something that has just kind of taken the world by storm as far as that kind of niche of fandom goes. So what's that like? And do you even realize it?
No, it's hilarious. I see everything through the lens of the internet, and it's weird. Whether you're reading 10 comments on something that you've done, like if you post something on Instagram and 5 of your family members comment on it, you might then be skimming through a message board of 1 million comments on an episode of a show you've worked on or something, and it all kind of funnels into the same sort of like, you're viewing it through that same lens. I haven't been out much since I've worked on Rick and Morty too. I feel like there was 2 years I was on the show before COVID, and then I had a kid shortly after COVID, so I don't make it out much at all anyway. I did get to, during the writers and actors strike, I ended up on the Comic-Con panel, which was a tremendous view of being in a room. But it's funny, I was up there on the panel and the rest of the room was kind of dark. The lights were on us. I couldn't quite see but it was a pretty vast crowd of people. So yeah, I really, it's just me in my house with my cats. And then suddenly I realized like, oh shit, this is like you're still just doing the same job. You're reporting to an office that's about the same size as every other animation studio you've ever worked on. So even if you've worked on a less popular show, it's the same office experience as a big, tremendously successful show. And it was a bummer when we won the Emmy for the Vat of Acid episode. That was the summer of 2020, so we were on COVID lockdown. Yeah. We didn't get the big night out. I actually watched it on TV, the win, and then we've been nominated twice since then, and we've gotten to go to the Creative Arts Emmys, which is an awesome night out and stuff. But we didn't win those times, so we didn't get it was a bummer that it happened during COVID. But I mean, a bummer, like champagne problems, of course, yeah. Well, hey, but it was really cool.
It's summer 2025, so you can celebrate the 5th year anniversary, get the crew together, everyone go out and just party and get super irresponsible. And, the only difference between you not getting much sleep in your regular day-to-day life is that you'll get a little bit of drunk sleep. It'll be great.
Yeah. It definitely was that episode in particular, there's a lot of episodes and I love all of them. I mean, we work so hard on every episode that we do. And, but that one, definitely got to put my own stamp on it, and it having it be as successful as it was just, it definitely scratched an itch, whatever the itch is that you're searching for, what you're doing all this stuff, the impossible itch to scratch as an artist. Like, it was definitely a great experience, as challenging as the shows can be to make. Sometimes the rewards are, huge too. So it pays off.
Yeah, no, sure. I can definitely relate. I grew up, playing music and recording my own bands and all that stuff. And even though, for me, it's just the exercise of it all, I think is like very rewarding and good for mental health. And then regardless, of what happens with the end product, it is always satisfying to be able to listen to a record you put together or whatever, and be like, there it is. I have an actual physical version of the idea I had in my head. Yes. So there is a little bit of that satisfaction that you get from that for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same with you, but making art can be frustrating, and like it's really exciting when you have the idea, then you have to go through the process of making it, which is like can be drudgery, and then releasing art is like to me the
Mm,
most fun. And sometimes I just draw shit just to throw it out on Instagram just to have the satisfaction of releasing something, because it can be years before something I've worked on actually releases to the public sometimes, depending on what it
yeah.
is.
Well, and I
Mhm.
think there's also something about like waiting to see how relatable it is. I think that's the biggest question mark when you're putting something together is like, you're like, I like this idea. Like, I'm
Yeah.
really digging it. Is that just me? Or are like other people going to relate with this? Like, you've got the picture on your Instagram of the cringing cadaver. And, it's like an EC Comics cover, which you have all those great, EC Comics covers right behind you there. So
Mm.
it's very reminiscent of that, but it's all about kind of that rumination that we all go through when you lay your head down on a pillow. And then in the post you have like it's like scroll for notes of therapy too, and all that kind of or notes from therapy. So there is something about like it's not just the satisfaction of having the idea and going through the struggle of creating it. It's putting it out there and being like, gosh, I hope people get this, or I guess that's the end hope of every creative work, right?
That piece you're talking about, because I love EC Comics and I love inking on paper still. I draw on the computer so often that it's really nice to turn on a lamp and turn on some music and ink on paper. And I just do those
Yeah.
exercises for the satisfaction of it. But I do these EC style things because I just love studying the work of all these different artists and trying to do my own thing, but still in that kind of vein.
Yeah.
But the cringing thing was almost like a self exorcism, because it's something I struggle with, is beating myself up for who I was in the past, and I was
Oh
actively
yeah.
working on it with in therapy. So it was an experiment of, is there a way I can release this to the public, and this curse, and will
Yeah.
it dispel the cringing at all? And it didn't quite work, but it's cathartic to have other people say I do the exact same thing, or like
Oh yeah.
I'm always doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to take like melatonin or like a sleep supplement just because when I lay down, it's like the hamster in the wheel just starts running 100 miles an hour. It's like you want to go through that moment when you were 15 that was like kind of awkward. Like what happened there, bro? And then all the way up to everything going on like more recently in my life where I'm like, just leave me alone. I'm so tired. I need to sleep. So yeah, I mean, that art there definitely relatable. I even, I pick up on some of it. I really like some of the detail reminds me a little bit of like the Crumb work from like the American Splendor kind of stuff. I'm not sure if you're a
Hmm.
fan of like American Splendor, but I love just that old school kind of just very detailed illustration, which I certainly see from, your work when you put the pen to paper. Is that something that started? So I'm curious to know the beginning of like your journey as far as picking up a pencil and paper just as like a hobby
Mm.
as a kid. Is that something that's like Jack Kirby and like Marvel and DC comics? Was it something like a horror movie that you saw? Was it the amalgamation of the two with like the EC
Hmm.
comics? Is there like a cornerstone moment, and then maybe even like milestones like throughout your fandom that just sort of pushed you along to where you were like, I do want to go to school for this, and I'm going to give this whole thing a go.
For sure. Yeah. I specifically remember in the second grade or something, or the first grade, drawing a picture of a guy in profile holding a flashlight and drawing the beam coming out of the light. And I don't know, I got a lot of praise from my teacher and my parents, and somebody called me an artist. And I remember that being like, I'm an artist. And I literally feel like I set on the path then. And I've always considered myself an artist since then. And then my folks definitely, having encouraging parents is a huge, and they did nothing to
Mhm.
discourage me, only encourage. And I had this little composition book that you had to hand back and forth with the teacher, and you were supposed to write in it every day a little journal entry. And the journal entry in one page was, "My dad made me watch Night of the Living Dead last night. I couldn't sleep a wink." And my teacher, second grade teacher, who was a creationist, just wrote in red pen, "That sounds very very frightening." That's all she wrote. And my mother saw that and took it as a threat to call social services or
Oh
something.
my gosh.
But yeah, my dad showed me Night of the Living Dead, and that was a huge thing because like I had seen a zombie movie and it didn't traumatize me, but it definitely like made me excited about horror.
Hmm.
And then subsequently, when I was 8, my dad showed me Child's Play. I was too young to see it. It was during a lightning storm. That one did traumatize me. I had reoccurring nightmares about Child's Play. So, and that was the big one for me. That lived in my head as like the most horrifying horror movie of all time, even though I had only seen probably two, Night of the Living Dead and Child's Play at that point. But the biggie for drawing too, for me, was Ninja Turtles. I got crazy obsessed with Ninja Turtles around third or fourth grade, and I bought those Archie comics and I bought the Mirage comics and I copied the Eastman and Laird style drawings of the Ninja
Mm.
Turtles, and I mailed them a huge packet of original Ninja Turtle drawings and stuff. I was obsessed, and I feel like that went all the way up until like junior high or something, possibly. But and then around junior high, I fell off with it all. But then Image Comics came out, and I got really obsessed with like Spawn and some of that stuff
Yeah.
when it first came out. That inspired a lot of return to drawing. So there was a little gap, I feel like, from sixth grade to like seventh or eighth. It was somewhere in between sixth and seventh and eighth grade where I kind of like fell off with it. But then yeah, rediscovered comics again really hard around that time, and so comic books in conjunction. I mean, like, I don't know, yeah, 80s and 90s too. It's weird. There was like, if you walked into the toy aisle in the 90s at a Toys R Us, there was like My Pet Monster and Mad Balls and like Mad Science Factory where you would like burn the flesh off of my. I had an alien
Yeah.
dissection toy where you put slime in an alien. It seems like the whole culture was pushing you towards these these things, you know.
Yeah.
I don't see that as much when I walk the toy aisle anymore, but it was like a fucking Guar concert in the 90s. I mean, it literally looked like that. So yeah, I just felt very, I was obsessed with all that stuff, and I felt very encouraged by it all, and was hell bent on getting a career out of it. I forget at what age I became hell bent, but I definitely was working towards it all through high school and you know, subsequently in college. So yeah, that was the uh, sort of like how it all started. And then I went to Savannah College of Art and Design in Georgia to study. I majored in sequential art, which is comic books. They had a
Mm.
course there, but it involves storyboarding as well. So that's where I started storyboarding, and I love that program because I felt like the illustration students would spend like 2 weeks on an illustration for their class, but the comic book artists would have to do 4 pages of comic art in that time, which involved six or
Yeah.
seven illustrations per page, and it just felt like the quantity over quality nature of comic books are meant to be both, but there is a quantity aspect to comic books that
Yeah.
illustration doesn't necessarily have. So it was more drawing in an intense, shorter amount of time, and it's weird now. Like anything I draw as a storyboard that I know is a means to create something else, I can scribble through real fast. But when I do sit down and ink those pages, I agonize over every brushstroke, and they're not much more detailed. But for some reason, I just obsess over all the details more, and want everything to be as perfect as I can get it before it's done. And so it takes me way too long to draw a comic book. I don't think I could ever actually operate in the comic book industry, drawing like 2 pages a day or whatever those guys do.
Yeah.
Heroic.
Need to be a
Yeah,
little more economical in the in the speed
yeah.
department. But I totally get it too. You pour over those details because I think the way that we look at our own creations is just with a lot more, there's just more of a discernible eye. We're just pickier about it because you want it to satisfy something in you where you're just like, no, it's not good enough. That's why George Lucas couldn't leave the Star Wars movies alone. Every time they were going to put him out, he was like, well, maybe I'll change this thing again. It's like he just couldn't
Yeah.
help himself because we've got this idea of what perfect is. It's totally different than the way the audience is going to view it, which is an interesting thing about art. They always say that it's like once you put it out there, it's not your art anymore. It's like everybody's.
Hmm.
And I found that usually the audience, as long as they're like keen to what you're doing, they're usually not only more forgiving, but they don't even notice those little things. It's like obsessing over your face. Like you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, wait, I haven't noticed that wrinkle before. No one else is going to notice. Like you're just noticing it.
Uh,
It's kind of that way with art.
Yeah, but I mean, like every time you scroll past or come back to that piece and you see that one thing that you got wrong, I drew that hand too fucked up. You can't let it go. So
Yeah.
it almost doesn't matter. I know that the
Yeah.
whole point of art is to have a conversation with an audience of people, but there is something internal about it too, completely like self-indulgent even, and
Yes.
I don't know. It's strange knowing what the parameters are on that and how much you can let go. It's nice to have stuff yanked out of your hands by a deadline. It really is, because when I
For
don't have
sure.
a deadline, I have a really hard time self-imposing that on myself. So it's.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can only really revisit the albums I've taken part in a certain, heightened state. Because if I
Oh
revisit
yeah.
them when I'm like when everything's fine, yeah, I will just obsess, and I'm like, "Dude, there's no like, what are you doing? Just leave it alone. It's in the past, bro." But yeah, I totally agree. Having that deadline, just being like, "It's done when it's done. I'm taking my hands off of it. That's it." You just gotta trust that people are gonna dig what you do. It's funny that you had mentioned so Night of the Living Dead and Child's Play. Child's Play was actually one of the first horror movies that I ever saw. I think
Did it traumatize you or?
I fell in love with it. I was like, I think it was 1990. I was like 8 years old. I was in third
I
grade
was
and
8
I
when I
saw it at
saw
a
it.
friend's house and it made me want to get a My Buddy doll. Like I asked for a My Buddy doll at 8 years old, not because I wanted to play with the doll, but because I wanted something that kind of reminded me of Chucky. And but I think it was like Jaws is kind of what got me into the
Ah,
whole just like film in general. And even though it didn't really scare me, it just got me interested in like the thrill ride of it all and got me into sharks and all that. But then it was Halloween 2 on the USA Network, Friday the 13th on the USA Network.
yeah.
Saw Night of the Living Dead when I was in high school, and that kind of like pushed me over the edge. And then when I saw The Evil Dead, I was like,
Yeah.
oh shit. Like horror movies can be like punk rock. Like it felt like because I was listening to all that skate punk at that time too, and I was like, this feels like this awesome like DIY rough and tumble. They're doing whatever the hell they want. They're being really creative kind of work, which just sort of reminded me of my interest in punk and metal and all that kind of stuff. And I know you're a
Mm,
fan of metal and punk. I've seen, I've creeped on the Instagram. So I saw you got to check out King Diamond.
yeah.
What was it?
Oh,
Last November. A nice little Shane McGowan post as well. So I'm like, all right, we got
oh
some
yeah.
similar interests. Do you see, I mean, other than with metal and horror, clearly there are themes there as far as like the visuals go, but do you see any sort of connection like that with the just the things that are a little like off kilter or not mainstream? I've always felt like punk and horror are kind of, I don't know, there's something similar. Am I way off there? What do you think?
No, I think horror is meant to be rough around the edges, and it's meant to be, speaking truth to power in a lot of situations. I love these stories because they're all political and
Mm,
they're morality tales, but they're
yes.
not religious. They're not really religious morality tales as much as they are fables. And yeah, punk
Hmm.
rock is meant to do the same thing, and I think there's a lot of crossover. It's interesting. I even love heavy metal horror movies. They're really
Yeah.
cheesy ones, and I love when they get tangled up together. I don't think it always works. I think sometimes like you see a movie where somebody puts a metal song in because they want it to be tough and like pump up the
Yeah.
movie, but it fails. It's almost like when you buy a big truck to look like a bigger person. It's bravado and it
Yeah.
does it. And I'll listen to that same metal song removed from the movie and get super pumped up about it and feel all the energy that they wanted that to imprint into their movie. But something is off
Yeah.
about it. It's almost like metal has to be combined with something ironic in a movie or I will say like in Stranger Things when Eddie played that Metallica riff in that one season,
Hmm.
that worked for me. Like there's these moments where it does intersect and it works perfectly. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, metal and punk rock for sure, biggies. I was because there was a perfect opportunity for me to just get way into mid '90s hip hop growing up, and I was into hip hop as well. But then the horror rap came out, like the Gravediggers and what's the other one, Flatliners. And, there was a
Hmm.
whole bunch of like horror related ones, and again, I got way into that. It turns out I'm super into like novelty music and goofy shit. You know, I love all the stuff that doesn't take itself seriously, and that's the
Yeah.
same with horror. I like the horror that is a little bit more Carnival Funhouse
Mhm.
than the stuff that's super hard edged. And I discovered that also Child's Play. You know, I was scared of slasher movies like Freddy and Jason through my teens. Like I shied away from Fangoria magazine. I don't remember what brought me back around to it. But there was a like when we were 12, I guess there was a sleepover party and a bunch of kids watched Child's Play, and I was still having had one viewing of it that traumatized me. I was like, "Are you guys all right?" And they were like, "Yeah, yeah, it was pretty scary. We liked it." And I was felt so emasculated by their shrugging it off as but also it was important for me to learn like okay you saw that when you were younger you can revisit some of this stuff now you know
Yeah.
so yeah, the intersection is really important. I think some of the stuff I worked on when I first moved out here was attempting to kind of have a rock and roll attitude, you know, and that's always something I think horror directors are big metalheads. You know, a lot of animators
Yeah.
too. I've discovered big time.
I really love that first Child's Play movie. It is like when go back to it, because I'm a big rewatcher. That's kind of one of the things I do for comfort is I just rewatch the movies I love. I get a really awesome like there's like an 80s cop, like gritty cop drama kind of vibe with Child's Play that I really enjoy. And then man, that first sequel is really fun. I think that's such a great like 1-2
Mhm.
punch. After that, the series gets a little spotty for me. But yeah, so much damn fun. There was just something about like, I had the same experience with my parents when I not only like when I decided to become more creative and when I was a little kid, I drew and all that kind of stuff too, because my older brother, who's like 10 years older than me, he's an amazing visual artist. I mean, I used to look through his sketchbook when he was gone at college just because I missed him and wanted to see all the cool shit he would draw. Like back in the 70s and 80s, he would draw like his own Transformers and he would take like a whole page to show how the Transformer would change from its standing form to its mechanical form or whatever.
That's awesome.
And now he works in the industry as well. He does 3D matte painting and all that stuff, which
Oh,
is
cool.
it's just wild to see that he's been able to work on some great TV shows and movies and all that stuff. But my parents were incredibly supportive, whether it was like me wanting to draw comics as a kid, or then when I got into music, they would go to every show and all that. And maybe because I'm the fifth of five kids, when it came time to watching horror stuff, they're just like, oh, whatever, just go ahead and
Yeah.
watch whatever you want. Like when
Yeah.
I was like 8 years old when I saw Halloween 2 on television, and I like pointed at the TV and was like, Dad, that's what I want to be for Halloween this year. And he was like, all right. Took me to the hardware store, got me a fake retractable knife that screamed when you pushed it in. And they had no cool Michael Myers masks back then. It's not like it is today. So I wore black sweatpants and a black sweatshirt and painted my face white, and I was Michael Myers. But
That's killer.
that kind of support, it's amazing, what it can do, because those people are always going to be there for you to keep you grounded, but not to discourage you on that journey. It's one of those things that I feel like you have to have, especially because sometimes when you tell people you like something like horror, they look at you like, everything okay? Because not
Yeah.
everyone gets it. They're like, I don't like scary movies. And I'm like, well, they're not really scary. Like, you're a grown adult. Like, it's the screen offers you protection, man. Is there
Yeah. The
anything like in, no, go ahead.
my dad described the chest burster scene from Alien to me before I was ever old enough to watch it. And when I eventually did see that scene, and I might have seen the Spaceballs parody of it first and then seen the I don't remember. But
Yes,
I
same.
when I saw the chest burster scene, I was disappointed that the creature wasn't mischievously smiling because my dad was
Oh, yeah.
smiling mischievously when he was describing it to me. So it's interesting, yeah. Like they can even spoil some of this stuff for you if they're too encouraging for you to pursue this stuff. But he was always a huge horror fan, and I really credit my dad for getting me interested in this stuff and drawing as well. And then yeah, they were helpful to help me move to LA. I didn't have my shit together when I graduated college. They definitely helped me, and That's a story. A lot of people out here get help to move out here because Los Angeles is a very hard place to move to and get rolling and
Yeah.
get integrated. There's a lot of stories about, oh, I slept in my car and all this stuff. And yeah, we've all done that, but it doesn't mean that it's a rags to riches story. You do need support. A lot of people do have
Yeah.
support systems, and it's nothing to be totally ashamed of. I feel like some people they want their story to be a rags to riches story where they did it all themselves, and it's just not true.
Yeah.
Support's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you don't have it, you're just going to lose it. I mean, even just to keep your confidence up when things aren't going super well, to help get that belief going. Yeah, I remember you're talking about the alien chestburster. I remember my brother went and saw The Fly, the David Cronenberg Fly, and
Mm.
came back and was telling us all about it. And he's talking about pulling fingernails off and putting them in jars. And I'm just like, I was like 6 years old or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds like completely wild. But, and then he ended up showing me like all the important movies like Alien and all that stuff when I was growing up. So definitely cultivating that love for sure. As you were going through that journey, grade school, middle school, high school, college, you know, at what point were you like, I know I've got it here, and I
Mm.
know that if I take this big leap and I go out and it's a big leap of faith to go out there to LA. What was that like, and at what point were you like, I got this, like this is gonna work out? Or is it one of those things where you never really have that moment because you just get so busy caught up in the work?
No, I think when you're a young artist, I think particularly it takes a long time to crush. If you've been supported enough and you've had enough successes early on, you're like, I'm gonna be the next fucking James Cameron. Fuck this shit. I'm going. Let me get out there to Hollywood and sort these assholes out. They don't know what the hell they're doing. Like they need
I'll tell
me.
them what's what.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. There's a new sheriff in town, but you got to have that. You got to have that hubris a little bit. We had an incredible arts program at our high school. It was insane. I don't know how it happened. I was insulated, Pennsylvania, small, a lot of conservatives. I don't know how we got this amazing liberal arts program. But I was doing college level work with my high school art teacher. My senior year in high school, I had like 7 art classes out of 9 periods in a day, and we were doing college level work. So when I got to SCAD, the first year is all foundation work, and a lot of the teachers were like, you've already done all this, and it was like, well, yeah, we were doing this stuff like sophomore year of high school. And then I was really craving a career. I wanted to get started right away. I didn't want to take any time off. And so between sophomore and junior year, I started mailing out portfolios. I started, you know, really pursuing jobs, and when you get feedback from some of your heroes in those moments, I got like letters from K and BFX. I sent them a bunch of portfolios, and
Yes.
Howard Berger wrote to me, and that, like, having a connection at that time when there wasn't really the internet, and getting a paper
Yeah.
letter that says K and B letterhead, and like it was like
Yeah.
intoxicating. So then suddenly you're like, oh, this is accessible. And then between junior and senior year, I remember my brother was living out here in LA, and I came out to just hang out with him over the summer for a couple weeks and couch surf. And there was a Fangoria weekend of horrors, and I went to it. And I'm the only guy walking around with a portfolio full of comic book art. But I met this director named Tor Ramsey. He had made a movie that he was showing there called Children of the Living Dead. It was a Pittsburgh zombie movie with Tom Savini in it.
I've seen that.
You
I've
have.
seen that movie.
All right, so
Yes.
you've seen some deep cuts, like, because
Oh yeah.
so Tor was there, and Vincent Questini, the effects guy, was there, and they were looking at my portfolio, and I see them talking. And then Tor's like, "Hey, you want a job?" And I'm like, "Sure." So they were like, I want to reshoot the ending and have, we kill Tom Savini off in the first 10 minutes of this movie. I want to pitch to the producers an ending where he comes back. We want to get Tom Savini back for a week and shoot a really cool fight. So I spent a week that I was out of 2 weeks couch surfing, drawing this sequence for this guy. And
that connection, and meanwhile, I'm like, this town's a piece of cake. I've been out here 1 week, and I got a job on it's a Pittsburgh
It's not
zombie movie.
very it's not
Yeah,
very hard.
meanwhile, I'm doing it for free. I'm not being paid anything. I'm just like, oh yeah, as an entry level thing, I'll do it, And
Yeah.
so that went over great, and I made a connection with Vincent, the effects guy, and I started drawing creatures for him. And that was largely what made me move out to LA. Was Vinny's studio was new out here. He had been an East Coast guy. He had worked on Saturday Night Live, and he did Dogma with Kevin Smith and all that Poop Monster
Nice.
and all the Angel Wings,
Yeah.
all that cool stuff. And then so he was freshly established on the West Coast and trying to get like a TV show or something into his studio so that he had consistent work, because those effects studios are like animation studios. When there's work, they staff up. When there's not work, they downstaff. So I moved out here trying to get a creature design gig with him, and I did. I worked with him for many years, doing even dog and pony show stuff, doing pitch art, like the stuff I did on that other guy's thing to try and get work to get work, audition work.
Yeah.
Basically. But yeah, and at that time while I was out here, there was a couple live action storyboarding agencies. I don't know if they're still around, but I went to them with my portfolio, and the guy was like, look, you're really good. I just can't I can't hand you off to clients if you're somebody who has no credits. That catch-22 of, you need to have worked to be able to get work.
Jeez, yeah.
So
exactly.
he was like, go out there, get some credits, and then come back to me when you have some credits under your belt. So I took it way too seriously, the whole whoring myself out for free thing. I did it far too much and for far too long, and you should do one or two of those things per customer, don't do 10 of those things and just stay in. I was just trying to keep it going until something happened. And while conversations are happening and carrots are being dangled and people are telling you, oh, this producer's going to see it and this famous filmmaker's going to see your work and all this stuff, you run at that shit. But I just think about how I could have probably, with all the time and energy spent on all that work, just made my own movie in that time. The amount of money
it's seductive. It's seductive because you're like, it's gonna pay off at some point. It's gonna pay off, but it ends up feeling like, when is that point gonna come? Am I being too impatient? Am I giving too much? For sure. It can be tough, like, when you're doing that, the freebies, for sure.
Yeah, it could be. It's not like a crack forms in the wall and you slip through and you're in the business now. It's sort of like through a series of small victories, you get osmosis, and then suddenly you turn around 10 years later and you're like, holy shit, I'm working on a real TV show now and shit. And it's like, but at the time, I mean, I was swinging for the fences. I did like sports caricatures, and I took illustration work off message boards at comic book stores, and some guy was at Kinko's and saw my artwork and one of my portfolio packets being printed, and he randomly called me, and I ended up working with that guy. I don't know, like crazy shit. And a lot of it didn't amount to anything, but it was good practice. And I was nuts. I didn't have a lot of decorum. I didn't know how to be behaved or professional at that time. So it's probably good a lot of young artists who are really good artists get their first gigs right away, but they burn bridges right away because they're not mature enough to handle it, But yeah, that was like a really long stretch between 2001 when I moved out here and 2008 when I got a union storyboarding gig on King of the Hill. So in those years, I got a job doing digital film restoration. My college roommate moved out here and he got me that gig, and that's how I paid the bill. Digital film restoration and animation are the only way I've ever paid bills. I've never, in creature design or
amazing
live action storyboarding, come close to making anything remotely close to a living. But there's game to that too, You're supposed to kind of like meet a group of people and stay with that group of people as they travel from gig to gig, like you fall into one and I was all over the place. So there probably were a couple of those along the way that I could have gotten into that I for whatever reason didn't end up, getting taken along for the ride.
Yeah, and I guess it all just worked out the way it was supposed to, because it is one of those things, like, being talented alone isn't enough, to end up having a successful career. There are plenty of people that are talented and it just doesn't go right because there's timing, there's meeting the right people, probably a little splash of luck in there as well to go along with everything. I think of like, yeah, becoming a professional artist and having a lengthy career, it's like becoming a massive like sports star. It's a very difficult thing to do, and there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that at the beginning of their lives would love to do something like that, like whether it's being an athlete or an actor or a writer or a director. It's like it just gets whittled down and whittled down, and it really is, a whole bunch of stuff has to coalesce. So it's interesting that earlier on when we were talking, you were saying like, you thought maybe like illustration was where you wanted to be. And then when you found yourself with the animation people, you were like, oh, these are my people. Because sometimes it's like, there might be the one thing that you're most passionate about. Like music is my number one love when it comes to art and all that stuff. But now I'm finding myself, since I've switched gears from that to talking about movies and horror, and in no way am I trying to compare any sort of success to what you've achieved, but I'm just saying that when I made that switch over, I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe I should have just been doing this all along, because even though movies might not be my number one passion, maybe I've just got a knack for talking about this stuff instead of trying to be a musician. So it was like one of those weird realizations where you're like, oh, I guess this is where I'm supposed to be, and you just kind of give into it a little bit.
Yeah, you got to roll with what clicks. You can't fight it for sure. And you might still be, I still love movies and want to participate in that space. And I do when I can. I help friends out with stuff, and I develop my own stuff all the time, and I work, and I'm constantly dreaming of that stuff. But you just can't, when something's staring you in the face, like, oh, I draw the exact same type of shit these people do, and they're talking about the same stuff, and they're into this exact, like, you're just like, oh shit, this is it. And it's not bad. It's just like, it might not be what you exactly were pursuing, and then it might be hard to actually switch your brain over to that. And definitely, it's luck. It's interesting now too, with everything's so strange now, where you had to climb that Mount Everest of moving to Los Angeles to get into this profession. Whereas now, as post-COVID, I work with people that live in Spain and Colorado and all over the place. And so it's a whole new world now. The landscape's changing constantly. But and to your point, it wasn't necessarily the most talented people who climbed that Mount Everest of moving to LA and enduring all the bullshit. It was enduring it, and it was, let's face it, like I've met some of the most brilliant people I've ever met in my life here in LA. Moving from small town Pennsylvania, and I met some, not knocking PA. I'm just saying, like, I've met a larger variety of people. But also, I've met some of the richest people I've ever met in my life since moving to LA, and they're out there pursuing the same stuff. It's not a tournament of talent; it's a tournament of access, and So definitely having to realize, oh, I'm not the new sheriff in town. There's a reason that all this weirdness comes out of Hollywood that doesn't entirely make sense. Like, why didn't the best script get made? Why didn't there's a lot of other factors going on here.
Socio-political kind of stuff going on, and all that, I would imagine, for sure. And so it sounds like, you said you still work on, or you have aspirations of maybe even getting into film. Now, is that something where you would want to do something that's like, more work on storyboards, or would you ever want to take that leap and do something like live action direction, something like that?
For sure. I made a short film way back in the day, years ago, and I've been working on one progressively for years. I have many different projects at many different stages of completion. Some of it lingering over, from before my animation career began. Like, I have projects that are 10 years old. 15 years old, longer even. And totally. Like, anything I can do creatively that scratches that itch. Animation has been my career, but then there's also, there's I really do enjoy film. Isn't always the best medium for me. I have to
Mm.
acquiesce to the fact that it's a collaboration. I like to as a control freak. I like to kind of like do everything myself, which is not conducive to a lot of art forms. But um, the you know I think that there's sort of like a satisfaction that I get out of uncompromised work that I
Mm.
did not submit. The work that I do for pay is not, those shows all don't belong to me. I'm helping someone
Sure.
else build their thing, and there's a lot of just letting it go. I might not agree with something or not like something, but it's a matter of taste. I know that we're it's part having, they want my opinion, and part here's your paycheck, you're done for the day,
Yeah.
like it's
You have you have somebody that you have to answer to.
for sure, yeah. And
Yeah.
the fantasy of the filmmaking stuff is like stuff I would do, I think, as best I could to maintain control of it. I still fantasize about doing that stuff just for myself. If I had a career, if I got the opportunity, I mean, like, I don't know. I don't know what could happen with opportunities, or even where the whole thing is going now with the advent of
Yeah.
AI. It's so bizarre and hard to keep focus on it. I talk to college students sometimes, and 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, they were greenlighting animated projects in this town faster than they could staff them. It was an insane time. And then COVID hit. This was like six years ago, and then, like, there's just suddenly we're in this space where there's not a lot of animation work, and
Mhm.
you can't. I used to be better at giving sort of advice of how to break in, how to do these things, and everything changes so rapidly now that it's hard to keep pace sometimes. But for sure, the dedication and the attention to detail and the want, as long as that's there, I think everyone will succeed at what they want to do. It's just a matter of how it's distributed, how it's made. It's
Yeah,
all confusing.
and, like, I mean, what is, like, AI is pretty scary. It's, it's one of those things where, I don't even have a job in that line of work, but just from, hearing my brother talk about it and having those conversations with him, from where he comes from as a, 3D map painter, and now he's been working in, like, Unreal Engine and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
He has, like, friends and former colleagues that they've posted, like, AI pictures that have taken elements from their actual original artwork and put
Hmm.
it into, the AI generator doesn't just create something wholly unique. It will pull from things that are actually out there. So, what's your level of concern for AI, and what that means for the future of, visual artists, and, even going into animation?
I don't think anybody knows, but it's. I try to read up on it. I try to just stay aware,
Hmm.
and it's definitely going to have an impact. There's nothing. The genie's out of the bottle.
Yeah.
It's 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 hard to, it is. I think that it can be um, uplifting on one end of it if you view it as opening up access to things that might have been inaccessible before, but also
Hmm.
there is something to the breadth of the artist, the signature,
Yeah.
the developing these skills, all still necessary and helpful to. I think if you're going to be somebody who prompts AI, still having the skill set that comes from traditional methods is always going to be a thing. I don't know how it's going to impact stuff. I really I don't think anybody likes it. I think we all, you know,
Yeah.
I think there's something. I mean, I know for a fact there's lots of people who like it. I just there's been, decades of union interaction with studios and copyright, and there's yet to be seen copyright ramifications of what you just described. And at the same time,
Yeah.
while you see people fighting it, you remember back to Lars Ulrich suing Napster back in the day and thinking of how that
Yeah.
turned out, and like, you don't want to be on the wrong side of it. It's like we've seen enough of this shift. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just trying to stay optimistic and hope it all works out for the best. I think that um, making my own art has always been my big deal, and
Well, yeah, and I guess it's just making sure that the real artists, are still appreciated and still have a place regardless of where AI ends up. And I know a lot of people it's a kind of a hot button thing. I mean, even YouTube creators, there's some that are a lot, bigger. And if they use like an AI thumbnail, their audience gets upset. And it's like, well, I mean, I've used like I'll take a picture and put it into Photoshop and I want to turn it into a widescreen shot. Just take this image and I'll let AI fill in that negative space so I
Mhm.
can make a thumbnail. I'm just one person. So I think there's like applications where it's like, for one person that isn't really getting paid for what they're doing, like the AI is very helpful for me.
Mhm.
But then if a studio is just like gonna, just use it to trim budgets and put people out of work, then you're like, oh, well, that sucks because there is something about the personality. Like, even though AI could probably make a Don Bluth movie, I'd rather just see a hand-drawn Don Bluth style movie. Like, I don't want to watch the AI version of the Black Cauldron. I want to watch the Black Cauldron. It's like, so it is one of those interesting things.
To what you said, yeah, it's the thing with horror fans always screaming, we want practical effects in our movies, not
Sure.
CGI. And then there's the people who say, the best is the marriage of the two, you know. But
That's
that's
me.
if you're, yeah, that's if you're going for photorealism, or depending on what your desired effect
Sure.
is. Because I find myself to be more of a practical effects fundamentalist in a weird way. And the confusing thing about AI, this is not really about AI, but the idea that AI could create something that you can't discern from a practical effect is disturbing. But
Yeah.
it lends itself to what I'm describing. There was an effect on The Walking Dead this one season. I think it was the season where they were at Terminus. Did you watch that show?
I watched the first two seasons and then I was like,
Okay.
oh no, it's doing the TV show thing where
Yeah, yeah,
the beginning's exciting, the end is a cliffhanger, and everything in the middle is just fluff. And I'm like,
yeah.
eh.
No, I don't blame you. There was a really exciting season premiere where they these cannibals got them, and there was a long trough, and they pushed the people over the trough, and they were going down the line, cracking them over the head with a baseball bat to stun them, and then slitting their throat. And they're going down the line of these people doing that, getting to our main characters, and it was really exciting. You're like, oh my god, are they going to
Yeah.
kill one of the? And there was a beautiful neck slash where this guy's neck got slit and the blood shot out, and you were like, oh my god, that was an awesome, clearly a practical effect. And then in Talking Dead, which was the post Walking
Yeah.
Dead
Yeah.
wrap up show that they did, Greg Nicotero from K&B was on there, and he talked about that effect. He was like, yeah, we had a tube running up his neck to this bag, and they slit it, and then we just digitally erased the tube. And I actually felt less impressed. I had a reaction to
Oh,
that.
gotcha.
And so there was what I
You are
equated.
a fundamentalist.
Well, it's what here's what I equate it to, and I think this is what a lot of filmmakers, and there's truth to this. If you went to this and saw an amazing death-defying high wire routine, and you were like, oh my god,
Yeah.
this person's gonna fall to their death, and then you find out afterwards they actually had a safety cable and there was a net, and they were never in any danger. It would
Mhm.
retroactively rob you of a little bit of what, and I think that seeing a practical effect that is designed play from start to finish is a lot like capturing a stunt on film. If somebody jumps off a
Sure.
building or something like that, when you're watching The Rock on a green screen versus seeing an 80s movie where a guy is jumping off a building into a inflatable bag. And
Yeah.
I just think that it's the reason that horror fans like practical effects is because cartoons are contrived. Every frame of them is poured over. There's even if your effect looks a little bit fake, but it looks puppet fake. Puppets are intrinsically
Mhm.
creepy, and also there's an unpredictability to what it's going to do that kind of imprints onto your nervous system, whether it looks
Mhm.
good or not. And I think that like when things are so tailored, so that's the thing with AI. I don't know if when people are watching something, if they know it's AI, if that's going to affect their ability to view it, and
Yeah.
or their ability to enjoy it, or as a real experience. Because I think always with horror, it's about trying to sell realness to a degree, sell
Sure.
photorealism or the actual horror.
And sometimes I just think like one of the things that I, mention when I talk about it on the channel is I just think it's like, what does the piece require or what's fitting to the piece? Peter Jackson's Dead Alive, or Brain Dead if
Exactly.
you're not from the States. Like, that's one of the most impressive movies I've seen, not only from a visual effects standpoint, but the direction and the editing, because some of those shots go from real person to dummy with a fist through their mouth in one frame. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like, I still watch it and I'm like, how is that possible? Or something like Day of the Dead, which I think is probably Savini's most impressive work to me, and my favorite zombie film of all time, where everything is just done perfectly, like right in camera, but probably more expensive than AI or CG.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think some of the CGI is nearly as cheap as it could be practical, but it's more set time. It's more time on set dealing with the physical and subtractive stuff for sure, where you're reducing, like if you want a person with half their face missing, it's harder to achieve. Yeah. Yeah, I actually like watching a movie and seeing the filmmakers are trying to erase the brushstroke. They want you to just watch it and think it really happened and not know how it was done. I actually like to see that it was a practical. So I'm actually like, I like to almost being taken out of it in a good way, to notice, oh, they did that practically. That's something that I get a kick out of when I see something happen on screen. To this day, though, I don't know if it matters to the younger generation. We'll see. I mean, I still hear people are pretty yoked up about practical effects, and I love them. I still love when people pull them off great. And it's an art form that was so in its infancy when CGI came and took it over, and there's so much more to explore with practical that hasn't been done. And you mentioned Dead Alive. It's a perfect example. Like, if that baby wasn't a puppet in that baby rampage scene in the like, it wouldn't have it wouldn't be the same thing if it was a digital cartoon character bouncing around. I mean, like,
yeah, and even by the climax, the mom is this giant puppet, like the stomach that opens up, and just like some really, I think, I love seeing ambition. And you know, it's one of the reasons why I love like punk and why I love horror, because I think the creators just get so ambitious for these wild ideas. You know, capturing that practical. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And I think, like, as audience members get older, they start to appreciate those things. So yeah, the younger generation, when they're kids, they may go and watch Jurassic World and not think anything of it. But maybe by the time that person is in their 20s and they're watching, like, you know, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Friday the 13th, whatever, they start to realize, because I've got some of my audience are, you know, younger than me, late 20s, early 30s, and they're big into the practical stuff too. So I think sometimes it's just, the longer you're an audience member, hopefully you become a smarter audience member and you start to notice those things and hold the creators kind of to account, you know, and be a little picky about what you ingest and what you let in.
See, like, the world, as the world gets darker and crazier, I like, I've always loved the insane, nonsensical stuff, the you know, sort of cornball, and I find myself now going back and like looking for old Screaming Mad George gems that missed me in the 90s, that, you know, I did not see Children of the Corn 3 Urban Harvest until a couple years ago, and I was delighted by the big swings that some of the practical effects took in there. I look for these things, and I love when something bizarre, you know, some of my favorite movies of recent memory are stuff that aren't even really horror, they're horror adjacent. Like, I love John Dies at the End a few years back. I think that was like a decade ago now or more. Mandy, stuff that's almost in a fantasy scape. But those Carnival Funhouse thrills, and seeing exactly what you're describing, like, the intent was there. There's some of those Screaming Mad George effects didn't go as planned. You can see it on screen, and I love seeing it not go as planned on screen. I love seeing the actors struggling to hold a prop on their head, or, like, you know, it's okay that the seams show through in this type of stuff. I don't know if, like, going to a horror movie to genuinely be scared is my goal. I really love rug pulls and twists and things that I don't see coming. I love watching movies where I don't quite know what I'm watching until the end. But you know, lately that comes in just moment to moment surprises, like effects. I might watch a terribly shitty movie, but there's stuff along the way I love. I watched Invisible Raptor recently, and the movie, it's not a movie I can recommend, But
I haven't even heard of that.
uh,
Invisible Raptor. All
yeah,
right.
it was there was stuff in it that was so charming and funny, and then there was stuff that I felt didn't work. But
Yeah.
all in all, like I have not seen Oppenheimer, but I've seen Invisible Raptor. Where
There you
I'm at
go.
now. Yeah.
And yeah, I don't go to horror movies thinking I'm gonna be scared. But yeah, same kind of almost like horror and comedy. It's almost like very similar kind of vibes where I'm like, I want you to kind of make me feel like you're going one way with something and then surprise me, the punchline, of a joke or the effects of a gore scene. Even though the Terrifier movies aren't my like kind of sensibility of what I look for when I go to horror. I've been able to enjoy each one more than the previous one because I think
Hmm.
they get a little more lighthearted. And the effects, like I don't know if you've seen those movies, but the effects are like very impressive and very like cartoonish. I would imagine if you're a child, they've got to be like bone-chillingly frightening. But as an adult, it's just like watching a twisted, demented cartoon.
Slapstick. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
the comedy being rough around the edges is the same thing for sure. Uh, I think that the way that the South Park puppets just like walk across screen, it
yes,
wouldn't be funny if there was a fluid animation cycle there, So
yeah,
the sketchiness, but yeah, I love the sort of like fun horror. I'll watch the hard edge stuff. I've watched stuff
mhm,
that's ruined my day for sure. I don't seek that stuff out like some people do.
mhm,
It took me a while actually to discover my taste for what sick and twisted that's fun versus sick and twisted that's mean spirited, and
sure,
finding that sweet spot. And I some of the stuff I've worked on and some of the stuff I created myself in my younger years was dealt with the ugly sort of like side of things and mean spirited stuff that I don't regret, but I was still learning, but I just didn't know. And I think younger filmmakers are more inclined to go that route. I think they're more like, I'm gonna fucking stick it in and break it off, and you leave the audience vomiting in the aisles, And I think as you get older as a creator too, you want to make stuff that appeals not to wider audiences, but just that you could. It's not as much about freaking everybody out as it is
sure.
entertaining, for sure.
Yeah. It is really tough because on the one hand, it's like I see something like Terrifier and I'm like, well, someone was going to do that. If Damien
Mhm.
Leone didn't do that, someone was going to do it. He saw that there was a desire for this extremely gory thing. And I guess the way I feel about it is like Terrifier is all I need. I don't need a bunch of imitators to try
Mhm.
to do the same thing because like it's a flavor that is so specific that I think we only need that little bit of it. Because yeah, it does sort of venture into the mean spirited. Like right now, I'm like kind of struggling getting through The Devil's Rejects by Rob Zombie, even though the
Mhm.
film looks great and all that stuff. The characters are just so unsavory. And I'm not offended. Like, and
Yeah,
honestly, I just feel like when it comes to art, like people should have their freedom of expression. And if it offends my sensibilities or whatever, that's more like my thing than the artist thing. I don't believe in censorship or anything, but I can certainly tell when something doesn't like really fit my taste or
for
when it's
sure.
ugly and mean spirited, like I can get a kick out of the Evil Dead, even the more serious Evil Dead films, although I love them all. It's my favorite horror movie franchise. But it never to me really crosses the line to getting so mean spirited. Although I guess there's a couple moments where it does
For
get pretty
sure.
close.
But it's even then though, it's so bonkers. Like I mean, like Freddy
Yeah.
Krueger is a child murderer, but he's his arms are growing and he's slicing his fingers off. He's a cartoon kid.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
Roger Rabbit is trying to kill you, and it's so funny that was like the pinnacle of like terrifying in the '80s. And now
Yeah.
when you watch those movies, you're like, I can't believe this was sold as a horror movie. It's just so nuts. The like something like the coffee table. There's because there's ugly and mean spirited stuff that ruins my day. Like of recent memory, like I watched Megan is Missing, and that just like ruined my day. I didn't enjoy. Towards the end
Mm.
of it, I saw it through. I didn't enjoy watching it, and then when it was over, it stayed with me, and not in a good way. The director,
Uh,
that was that by design though. That wasn't really the director being ugly just for the sake of punching down. There was a message to that movie. I just didn't like what it was and didn't really need it. It's like I got it. I didn't really, it was effective. But the
I'm gonna stop you right there.
coffee table was very ugly and dealt with some stuff, but you could almost see the director giggling behind the camera because he's turning the screws not only to the characters but the audience too, and like
Yeah.
I had to laugh and kind of like I enjoyed that movie, but even though it's not something that I feel like would normally be in my range, but it's that movie's kind of in a category all its own. I feel like that one's definitely out there, different.
Yeah, and I like it when directors sort of like, when they're just driven with some sort of purpose, or they're like, yeah, the
Yeah,
purpose of this is to make you feel uncomfortable. Like Fulci, in that zombie movie, that sequel to Dawn of the Dead, when they pulling that woman towards the splinter, there's
yeah,
just the anticipation of like, it's coming. And like Fulci was big on that. This really excruciating thing is coming. I'm going to make it's almost like a money shot. It's almost like it gets close to pornographic in the way that
yeah,
it's like celebrated and shot. But it's very effective, and there's like a style to it. Tarantino in a similar or in a different kind of way, has his own sort of way of sort of relishing in those unsavory characters,
yeah. And he makes them fun. I love when the unsavory
Mhm.
characters are made fun. When they're just ugly, it can be hard to get through. But I've endured. I watch a lot of that stuff. I think that for me, there's been a few rare moments where horror or something horror adjacent has like kept me guessing to the very end. And I
Mhm.
really love when I don't get ahead of the movie when even if it's
Yeah.
for a minute, even if you suddenly realize who the killer is 2 minutes before they reveal it. I actually really love when it happens as you're watching it. And for me, like a couple experiences, like Dark City, when that came out in movie theaters, I had no idea what it
Mm.
was. I saw it in college, and I was like completely blown away. I had no idea what it was, and
Yeah.
the ending got me, and I loved it. And um, Session 9 was another one. That's a big one.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
loved. It's
Yeah.
almost until the last word of the movie is spoken, it's not complete, and you can't see the full puzzle.
Yeah.
There was no way to really get ahead of that one. And I haven't seen many like that recently. I kind of missed that. It
Mm.
felt like there was a little while there where we were getting those good kind of twisty movies. I've tried to
Sure.
find it in novels, horror novels. A lot of them though are just the mind fuck, which I like the
Mhm.
mind fuck. This person is these two other people, or this guy is actually 7 people, or the narrator's been lying to you. Those don't
Yeah.
qualify as twists to me. I kind of want something that's
Sure.
crafted by the story and reveals itself to you through just the natural components of the movie. Those are the few instances where I feel like it did that.
Yeah,
I
I
guess,
really liked what was there. Did you ever see that Kevin Bacon movie Stir of Echoes from the mid 90s or
yeah.
late
Only
90s, I think?
recently, only recently I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was one I fell in love with when I was in high school. Like rented it once, and then 2 weeks later, Blockbuster's selling the extra copies for like $3.99. Picked it up, watched it like crazy, loved it so much more than The Sixth Sense, and then even found out that Richard Matheson wrote the book like in 1954. So even though the movie came out after The Sixth Sense, it was still an original story long before that. So read the book, which was really good as well. But I thought the movie did a pretty good job of crafting a story that was, had that kind of Stephen King-ish sort of quality to it. The solitary man, or the man going crazy and kind of losing his family while trying to figure this thing out. And then I just remember, and of course I was in high school when I first saw it, but just the goosebumps when it's finally revealed like what's going on at the end of that movie.
yeah.
And that was one that, just thinking back. But yeah, like I think
It
once
was
M. Night kind of popped off, everyone tried to do that thing of like, oh, how can we just do the reveal? Even
Sixth
like
Sense got
well,
me though when it came out. I mean, that
yeah,
scene with him at the dinner table reaching for the check is brilliant. It's fucking brilliant, and
yeah,
I wish that I wish more people could engineer stuff like that. It's
yeah.
rare.
Oh, oh my gosh, Strange Darling from 2024. Did you see that movie?
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was
I
terrific.
That was a really great keeping you guessing. Almost like you have to watch it a second time, like right away. Just like once you know how everything plays out, it's rewarding to see it a second time. I think I appreciated the performances even more that way too.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to check that out again. I remember it's because it's doing the unreliable narrator thing where the way it's revealing it to you makes you think something other than what it is. And but it was the segmented thing too, right? They did it in
Yeah.
out of order chapters. I really enjoyed that. I got to check that out again. That was one of the biggies from last year for sure.
Yeah, there's not even really a narrator. It's just the fact that they pick to reveal the chapters in that
Mhm.
order that you're always like, who's who? Who's the bad person? Who's the good
Right.
person? I thought the use of color was really beautiful. The use of music was really good. Again, like the storytelling kind of gave me a little bit of that Tarantino vibe, which I really dug, but really small cast and great performances. Yeah, that one I think that's one of the better examples of a movie that really kept me guessing until the last 5 minutes.
Mhm.
Pretty much is finally when they're like, "Yep, this is what's going on." There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, I love that.
But yeah, that one's really rewarding to check out a second time. Look, we're at about an hour and a half. I don't want to take up your whole day here or anything,
I
but I
appreciate
did
it.
want to ask you about, because you've got your Frankenstein back there, your cool banner hanging. I saw that, on your Insta, you have that really amazing drawing by, I believe it was Rick Baker that did that beautiful drawing of like the Boris Karloff version of
Yeah,
Frankenstein.
unbelievably, that's a sculpture that looks like
Oh, that's a
that's a bust.
sculpture. It looks like a black and white drawing.
I know, there was no way
Oh
I
my
could
God.
photograph it where it didn't look like a black and white drawing. It's
That's
incredible, yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
is Frankenstein, is that one? I know Night of the Living Dead is kind of where it all started, but when you
Yeah.
look back, I think all little boys have that. Like when I got into horror, I went to
Mhm.
my library and I checked out all those Universal books and fell in love with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff and Frederick March from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and all that. Is Frankenstein kind of like your guy when you think about those classic movie monsters?
No, it's funny that you put it that way because I didn't. Yeah, I love this. This is Jack Davis Frankenstein from the same EC Comics artist, but I love the number one for me was always Creature from the Black Lagoon. I had the Remco mini monster kit that they reaction figures have been remaking them, but it's a little action figure of him. It's really textured with every scale. And when I was little, that was like a tactile experience I had. I loved
Yeah.
the monster. So yeah, but for sure, Frankenstein in the category of biological or mad science, I skew that way a lot
Mm.
more. That's why Rick and Morty was like my dream job for me to get. Like,
Yeah.
I love biological monster movies. I'm not as into the supernatural, although I love. There's plenty of that stuff that I love. But because like for a while there, I was trying to clock what my top five were, and they were all monster movies. It was like Creature from the Black Lagoon, Tremors, Predator, Aliens,
Tremors.
John Carpenter's The Thing. Tremors is a
Yeah.
near perfect movie. I feel like it.
Oh, dude, Tremors is like, it's like if Roger Corman made a Jaws movie in the desert. It's just got that, like, it's a love letter to all those amazing, like, cheaply made but highly entertaining, 50s and 60s flicks. And the
Super
humor.
effective. Yeah, the
Oh,
humor,
yeah.
the way that they use trails of dust to like draw dotted lines of where the worms are moving and stuff. All that stuff is
It's
super. It's charming and beautiful.
I was gonna ask you about The Thing because I mean, like when I think of like biological monsters, I mean that one is like I don't know. Maybe it's so funny because like I love Halloween. Michael Myers is like my favorite slasher character, and but I just like I think The Thing is probably John Carpenter's best movie as far as technological achievement and just filmmaking and crafting a really interesting like science fiction horror tale. I don't know if it gets any better than that. It's wild.
I didn't see it until I was in college, and I didn't totally respect it until later. And then I was like, God, what was I? I was high or something when I watched it the first time, and I didn't get it. The other person that I didn't discover till college was Stuart Gordon. Like I saw From Beyond when I was in
Mm,
college, and I love Stuart Gordon. Stuart Gordon kind
mhm.
of hits the perfect mix of like kind of campy and insane meets kind of like wow, that was really dark and heavy. And
Yeah.
I loved. He was doing stage plays out here in LA. After his film career had kind of like cooled down a little bit, or I guess he was always still trying to get stuff made, but he was doing like, he did Reanimator the musical out here, but he
Mm,
did this one called Taste that was based on this German tabloid story where a cannibal put out an ad in the paper asking for a willing victim,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
the person came over, and together they cooked and ate his severed penis. And so this stage play was the real time meeting of these two people. He Americanized it, but the guy came over to the apartment, and you're watching them meet and go to do this thing that they eventually do by the end of it. And it was like very disturbing and beautifully done. I really wish he had done a film adaptation of it. His Jeffrey Combs does the stage play of The Raven as well that Stuart Gordon directed, and I really wish there was a film adaptation of that. There's just tremendous work by Stuart Gordon that I think he was one of my favorite directors, in addition to discovering John Carpenter and all that stuff, which I do feel like I discovered some of that stuff way too late. I wish I had found it sooner, but
well, you know what? There's just always time to appreciate it. The next time you're having a tough time sleeping, just pop in a John Carpenter flick, and now especially with the experience you have, and not only as an audience member, but with the work that you've done, I think maybe you find a higher level of appreciation for some of that, because I think like Big Trouble in Little China, that's another one that like hits for me really well. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh yeah,
like that's a huge one. And then, I mean, man, Reanimator is like, it is like, I thought Reanimator was so damn hilarious. And then I watched it with this girl that I was dating. And then some of those scenes pop up and I'm like, oh, this is kind of fucked up when I'm watching this with a woman. I didn't even think about it this way until now. Right. Like, this is pretty twisted, but there is something about Jeffrey Combs, John Holmes, Jeffrey Combs, purposely just giving that over the top performance that, I don't know, man, it like really works. There's some actors that like really push that, where it's like, yeah, like bring it on. And it's not for everyone, but in that movie, I don't know what it is, it just like totally works.
Beyond Bride of Reanimator too, I'm a huge fan of the sequel. Jeffrey Combs does some all-timer mad villain one-liners in that, or like mini rants in that one that I think are pretty hilarious. From Beyond is one of my favorites with him in it.
Yeah,
movie, so good.
I'll take all the Barbara Crampton you got.
Yeah,
I got to meet her about a year and a half ago, and I think I kind of creeped her out because I put my head on her shoulder. But that's all. I didn't like grab her or anything. I paid for the picture, Barbara. Come on, her and
you met her at a photo op.
Yeah, it was a smaller con out here in the Phoenix area, so it was really chill. Like, we got to like actually chit chat and everything, and I just like, I think she's one of the most beautiful actresses I've ever seen. She was actually in this movie called We Are Still Here from 2015. Have you ever seen that movie?
I think I've seen it. Yeah, I don't remember it exactly.
This older couple like has just lost their son, who's like college age. They move into this house in the middle of the country during the winter. And then it turns out that something happened in this house, and this house requires a sacrifice and all. Like, it turns into this crazy, like, kind of slow burn haunted house movie that takes some turns that I really didn't expect to see. But anyways, Barbara Crampton.
I'm gonna write it down just so I don't forget it.
Yeah, We Are Still Here. Very impressive, because I had never even really heard of it. Gave it a watch. Really dug it. Yeah, Barbara Crampton, Judy Aronson from Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and Weird Science. Wow. Those are my ladies. Now I'm just like totally off the track. I've left the interview. I'm now thinking about girls from the 80s. Here we are.
I've fallen off. I'm not up to date with who the new horror actors and actors. I mean, like there's almost like there's the kind of theatrical world of horror now, and there's the kind of like find it somewhere on streaming, like you did with that movie. Like there's so much stuff out there that you're suddenly like, how did I miss this one? There's some gems slipping through the cracks.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you have a family and a good career. It's like, and even like, so more recently, I've just gotten out of like this long-term relationship, and I'm like, you know what? As a couple of the healing things I'm going to do is I'm going to make more content. I'm going to pour myself into the channel more. And I'm going to go to a hell of a lot more movies. So I got that AMC A-list thing. It's like $25 a month, 4 movies a week if I want to. And I've just been seeing way more movies than I ever have. So I have so much that I have to catch up on. Because, I don't know who any of these people are either. I'm just like, I know the people I grew up with, and that's pretty much it.
the fact that really great indie horror is making it into the theaters too, and in some cases they're
Yeah.
making it into the cineplexes. It's awesome right now. I hope that there's more of
Yeah.
it. I think
Well,
Terrifier.
there's
You said you don't want a ton of Terrifier imitators, but I think you're gonna get them soon. You know that business
it's already
model.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already happened with like all the public domain stuff, like Popeye the Slayer
Mhm.
Man and Winnie or Pooh Blood and Honey or whatever those are called. All of those like taking child, public domain child characters and turning them into horror icons. That's the thing now. But also, you're right. There are the Filippo brothers from Australia. They had a YouTube channel called Raka Raka, and then they did Talk to Me, and more recently a movie called Bring Her Back. And they've both elevated from doing content creation on YouTube to having 2 movies released by, major studios. And then there's another one. What was the other one that I was thinking? Oh, I just think too, I'm noticing with some actresses like Sydney Sweeney is, a big time up and comer. Like she's kind of the hot new thing. But when she was in that Immaculate movie that came out in 2024, they were like running out of money. And she was like, well, how about I invest in it, you make me a producer, and we finish this movie the way that we want to finish it. And I think there's something really cool and powerful about younger performers being like, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to have a little say in what happens. And the projects that I'm passionate about, I can make sure that those are fulfilled. And to me, it shows that Sydney Sweeney is not just an actress that's beautiful and successful and all that kind of stuff. Like she's a horror fan. And like we need more of those horror fans to be like, I'm going to make these movies happen and I'm going to help grow that audience. So I'll get off my soapbox now, but way to go, Sydney Sweeney.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'm hopeful too. I find that a lot of these horror movies now, in the 80s, evil wasn't necessarily the opposite of good. It was just weird, spooky magic. The Clive Barker coked up, sexy 80s where and
Yeah.
I kind of want I do I feel like to a certain degree everything now that is evil has to be somehow tied into the Christianity or some sort of religious undertone, whereas in the 80s evil was detached from religion. It was just it was finger twinkling sorcery and stuff. It wasn't so my hope is that there will be a return to form to that. Maybe there's not enough of the correct drugs in the public for that to happen, but I want it. I have to think that, it exists out there still. There's still a market for it,
Well, hey, they're still making Evil Dead films. So, I mean, the cool thing about that is, Sam Raimi, Rob Tappert, and Bruce Campbell are still the producers. They still hold the control of that property, and they're finding filmmakers that they believe can write and then show those stories. So, and I think like Evil Dead moving forward, it's going to be kind of anthology. Like all of the stories, they aren't necessarily going to have to connect. They just have to use one of the 3 books that we've seen. And that's my preferred thing. I grew up Catholic and had a great upbringing and all that stuff. Like, nothing weird happened when I was growing up, and my family was so supportive. So I don't have that viewpoint of like, whether or not I like hate religion or anything like that. But I do know that for sure, when it comes to my horror and demonic possession, I want it free of like real world rules. Like I want demonic possession movies that are just batshit crazy and make up their own rules. And that's
for sure,
what really resonated with me about, Evil Dead. So I think there's still definitely a market for that. Although Terrifier, I don't know, it seems like they are bringing it into a religious kind of thing, which is crazy considering where it all started. But I don't think the 2 need to be connected at all.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that first Terrifier was almost just like watching a nightmare. It was just it was inexplicable. There was just this clown and he's coming after you and that's it. And I thought that was great. I love less is more type stuff like that.
It's almost like a proof of concept. It was like a series of skits that they just kind of loosely put together. You know what I mean? The first one doesn't really have like a story. It's just like, here's what we can do and here's our really scary character. Like, do you want to see a story? And then in the second one, they're like, okay, here's a story. But yeah, that first one is friggin' brutal.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. All right. Well, we're at about an hour and 40 minutes here, Jake. I really appreciate your time. I could sit here and talk about movies with you forever, but
I know.
But maybe, if this is something, if you had fun doing this kind of thing, then maybe we could, have a conversation somewhere down the line about, seeing if we could get you on for a live, and I wouldn't chew your ear off about the same stuff. We could like pick a fun topic that you would want to talk about or something like that. But, if you're interested in, keeping in touch either way, I'd appreciate it. And I certainly appreciate your time. It's been fun. It just feels like talking to a bud.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. And yeah, if you're into it, I'm totally down. I had a lot of fun, and I'm like you. I know I could talk like about this shit till I'm blue in the face. I may even talk about it in my sleep. It might have been what I said to my daycare worker when I showed up there, just babbling about the stuff. But yeah, for sure. I appreciate it, and really love what you're doing with just stirring the pot on horror and stuff like that. And
Thanks, man.
Yeah, definitely stoked to participate. So thank you.
Really appreciate you guys stopping on by and checking out the interview. And again, thank you to Leanna Bevy Rage for setting this up. And of course, again, thank you, Jake, for sitting down and having a chat with me. If you enjoy this kind of content, let me know by clicking that like button and jumping into the comments section down below. And while you're hanging out, why not hit that subscribe button as well? We have a lot of fun here on the channel. We're always hanging out in live streams, so come on by sometime and kick it with us. But until next time, I've been and will continue being Davey Deathray. Take care.